Hello and welcome to The Measure of Things, a podcast brought to you by Stabila. Each episode, we sit down with guests from across the world of construction to uncover what is shaping the industry today. In this episode, we're getting into something that affects more people in construction than we often admit, but not enough of us talk about, and that is mental health in trades. We're joined by two brilliant guests that are doing something real about it. We've got Lee Wilcox, CEO of On The Tools, the largest online construction community in the UK. And we've got Steve Kerslake, founder of Construction Sport, hands-on charity helping tradespeople reconnect, talk, and tackle mental health challenges head-on, on and off the site. So we're going to spend a bit of time digging into the powerful Lost City campaign that both of you guys are involved in, what inspired it, the real conversations that you've had with tradespeople up and down the country. I guess this one is for everybody who's ever felt pressure pile up, for the mates who've noticed and didn't know what to say, and for people like me that are probably a little bit uncomfortable talking about a topic like this, but want to know how we can be a force for good for everybody. Sound all right?
Let's do it.
Hang on.
We're going to start with just a little bit of background about you guys. So I'll start with you, Lee. I'd expect most people know On The Tools, but maybe don't know the setup story and your story behind it. So maybe just a little bit about you and On The Tools.
Yeah, so yeah, I think On The Tools has got some fame across the industry now, which is amazing. Yeah, look, started on a drunken Friday night. Myself and Ad, the other co-founder, he was moaning about the fact he couldn't find a plaster on a job he was on. We got really drunk and came with this idea around creating a recruitment app. That's how On The Tools came about. That was the initial idea. But we had no money. Ad said he had loads of funny videos that he could start a Facebook page with. He didn't. He had about 4. So we spent the first couple of weeks scouring around for content. We sent off a spec to a freelancing website in India, I think. I thought the strategy was we'll get 100,000 builders, as we referred to them back then, in one spot, and we'll launch the app. They'll all download it. We'll sell the business. That was kind of the plan. And then after 3 months, we had 250,000 people following the Facebook page. After a year, we had 1 million. We got the app back. It didn't work. And then we realised it was not a great idea in the first place, in the sense that the community had grown. And I guess even then, back then, we called it an audience, not a community. And I think there was some sort of, we went through some transitions really as a business. And but like we had people in John O'Groats, who we were just talking about earlier, and some down in Land's End. Actually, the chances of those two crossing from I need a job and I've got a job type affair, because this was all about B2B, it was subby to contractor and vice versa. We're like, this isn't going to work, or if it is going to work, we're going to need like Uber style amount of rollout and cash, which we didn't have. And so we just started creating. We'd already been creating content anyway to engage people. So we just sort of started doing that. We started selling merch, that worked. And then we landed on this thing that actually we didn't really have a bit of any sort of purpose for the business, really. Built this huge community. But they don't get looked after. They don't have the same perks, privileges and opportunities as the white collar. And that's kind of what really, I guess, probably halfway through the journey, maybe 4 years in, that's what we sort of set about doing. So we closed the merch store that we had, which is a sort of relatively big part of the business, and just fully concentrated on the community and the media side to try and find partners and change more of the industry. And that's kind of where, be 11 years in November of this year. And I think we're just an absolutely completely different business to what we started out as, but like way better for it.
When we talk about, I guess, the community and the fact that they don't get a lot of support, when you started to then think about what your purpose is for the future, when did mental health become one of those important parts? Because it feels an important part of your identity now.
Yeah. It probably wasn't at the start when we started thinking about what. I think I've told you this before, Keelan, when I was on last. But basically, I got asked to go and do this talk for I think it was like construction. I can't remember who it was for, and I did it. It was in London, and I was like, I'd not done much speaking at this point. I was like, yeah, I'll go and do this. They just asked me to go and tell the on the tour stories. Had some funny videos and photos, and when I got down there, it was actually much bigger than I thought. It was like 400 people in there, and I was thinking, oh shit, like that. This is like much bigger than I thought it was, and Anyway, I did it, went down really well, and at the end there was a Q&A, and I just got battered for about 25 minutes, just person after person standing up. I felt like an MP, and it was all around like, why haven't you got, more diversity in your videos? Why is the construction industry doing this? Why are so many people going out of business? Blah, 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 all these different things. I remember just like answering questions. I can't remember what I said to most of them, but I remember just thinking in my head, get me off this stage now. Like, I do not know what I'm doing, and I'm out of my depth, and I don't own construction. What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Went home, got on the train, was really pissed off about it. I remember, I always remember that journey back. So I always just remember, I was fuming. I just remember thinking like, what on earth is going on? And then I rang Ad, had a little vent to him, and then I got in the morning, and Ad was already in. He'd made a brew. He just sat. We had this long table called Hogwarts that we referred to. It's where the whole company sort of sat around, and we did company meetings and stuff. And he was sat at the end, and I sat down, and I said, I'm still fuming about yesterday, and he was like, well, I think they're right. And he's like, I think you're being a little bitch, and you need to like get hold of yourself. Is it because what are we actually doing? He's like, if you look at the purpose of the business, what do we do? He's like, we entertain tradespeople, we sell them really funny clothing and different things, and we work with some brands. He's like, but like, really, we already know that these guys aren't looked after. And he's like, what are we doing? And I was like, oh yeah, maybe you're all right. So we spent like the next, like, I'd say 6 to 8 weeks really sort of trying to hone in on like what that looked like, what it meant. We did a little bit of a rebrand, and really, I guess then at that point, it was more about having some form of like North Star. It wasn't really like, oh, we're going to focus on I don't think we knew enough about what we were doing, to be honest, to sort of go, oh, this is what we're going to focus on. It was much more just like, okay, well, what, we want to improve their lives. That's it. And we're like, okay, well, that's a starting point. We'll stick with that. And it's been tweaked over time as you sort of become a bit more mature as a business. You do all those things. But I think I would probably say, because really at that point, I don't really think anyone was even mentioning mental health. You're talking 2018, and like maybe it was just coming to the forefront a little bit within construction. I would say it's the second half of our journey, the last 4 or 5 years, where it's actually come to fruition that people and businesses and trades actually want to talk about things. So I would say we probably followed suit in that. I'd say we were earlier to it than others, but I would say that purpose has developed as we've spotted really big things that we're like, that is not okay. We've then attached ourselves to it and been like, okay, well, what can we do? And they've ended up being mental health and construction, but specifically suicide, tool theft, and skills. And that's kind of what we're like. If it's not those three now, we'll react to things, but like there are things that we're trying to
purpose.
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah. Same sort of question for you. I guess your background is different.
Yeah.
You're still kind of, we were talking before, you're still on the tools occasionally now as well. So give us an idea of, I guess, your background and how you set up construction sport.
Yeah, I kind of probably, and it is very similar to everyone in the construction in terms of fell out of school, landed on a building site, and learned from there where to go, really. I started doing carpentry and sparky work and dry lining, helping tilers, bit of everything. But then found a passion in groundworks, believe it or not, the lower skill one of them all. We always argue, is it a trade? I'm as a groundwork, I don't see it as a trade, even though there's nothing really to go to college for.
We debate this all the time, really.
100%. And I get it.
Construction worker or tradesperson.
Yeah, construction worker, and there's all these different sides to it. But that's construction as a whole, really. Yeah, and landed in it. Went through a number of years of been building landscaping, driveways, patios, all that kind of stuff. Friend of mine got in touch and said, "Do you want to come and help us out? We're working on a few big jobs and we've got bigger machines where we are." He said, "If you work with bigger machines, it's not as much hard work on the body." And I worked for 6 years in the groundworks, came at the start of it. 4 years, sorry. Everything was hand dug. Everything was done by hand, wheelbarrows around the side of houses. And then suddenly someone offered me an 18-ton digger and a dumper, and I was all over it. So I got into that. And then from there, the career side of it ended up going into the bigger the machine. I was more interested, and then ended up in the heavy civil side of construction and a lot of railway infrastructure works, highway stuff. And ended up in this kind of commercial, kind of corporate side of the industry in terms of the commercial side of it. Infrastructure world. I went through a period of ill health, shall we say. I got caught up in. I had acid thrown on me in 2008 in an attack on a Friday night outside of work, on the back end of a rugby tournament, funny enough, on a Friday night in Southend-on-Sea, of all places. Went back to where I lived, got caught up in an incident that it wasn't deemed for me, but it's a whole new story in itself. I had walked home with a group of guys who I knew through school but wasn't directly associated with. They attacked a few people. I stuck up for the innocent party and then got acid thrown on me. That led on to a few years later within a few weeks, actually 2 weeks of that, I was back on a building site because I was self-employed. I needed to work. Yeah, so a lot of skin damage, should we say. It done a bit around my eyebrow, burnt my eye a little bit, and done down my neck and down my chest. I went through that, but within 2 weeks, I was back on a building site being abused in the nicest of ways. The banter was come thick and fast. I developed a name to one of the aggregate companies that supplied us as Acid Steve. That was my nickname, and a lot of people thought it was because I was into house music. Well, I'm not particularly.
It's not very creative, is it?
No, and being out in that side of Essex as well, it's very much it's the place to be. We've got a lot of warehouses and warehouse parties around our way. But that was construction for you. They just let me have it straight away, and I was all for it. So in no time, I was back at the building site, and everyone was behind me and supported me for a good few years. 18 months after that, I started suffering my sleep, and then I developed will come to fruition as post-traumatic stress disorder, diagnosed with that. Went through a period of time. Once that was diagnosed to me through the NHS, I always used to hold a bit of anger towards the way I was treated. I'd done 3 counselling sessions and I was given this label, and then I always used to say I was labelled and let go. Now being a bit, like to think, older and maturer, I look back at it as in I was 21 years old. I didn't want to be tied to a label. I just ignored it, really, and I didn't want any further support. I just went out there, played a lot of rugby, drunk a lot of beers, and cracked on with life. And that come back to haunt me, really. I suffered with what was diagnosed later on as ulcerative colitis, was bleeding of the stomach, from downstairs, should we say, going to the toilet. I went through this journey of denying that, keeping it to myself, not talking up, blokes don't. And when that got really bad, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, took me to hospital. She forced me to hospital, went to hospital, and 10 weeks later come out, they'd removed my large intestine, I had a bag attached to me, all this kind of stuff, rebuilt my stomach over the period of 2 or 3 years. Had it all reversed, believe it or not, all back to how it's supposed to be. I was very fortunate. But in that time, I spent the best part of, so it was 10 weeks the first time, 6 weeks the second operation, and then 2 weeks on the third operation I had over 18 months. But I spent so much time in these wards that I come out of a new lease of life of, I'm never going back to that place or being that person. What can I do better? And then all these time between the operation stuff, the construction industry took me back in. The company I was working with held me, pretty much held my hand all the way through it. And she said, "Look, you can't work on the tools. We'll put you through your supervisor ticket." And then I become a foreman on the job in no time. I was 21 years old as a foreman on a project. And in the civils world, you don't have 21-year-old foremen. So they're normally there because daddy's gave them a job or they've been gifted silver spoon disposition. So I was thought of that as the first thing. So I was annihilated again with the abuse. And who do you think you are? But there was 2 things that won it over for me. Working at a school in Haverhill, out the back of kind of, where is it, between Essex, just off the M11 actually, down towards Essex and Suffolk Board. I might be getting that completely wrong, but yeah, over the back of Braintree from where I live. But I went out on the job, and the few guys who had their backs up against me had the ump about a few things. And one of them was pay. One of them was owed a couple of hours. And then the other one was just angry because it was hot and there was no even cold water on site. We had water, but nothing cold. I argued the case in the office of these guys are out there that've been denied their pay, they're due a couple of hours. That guy got his extra few hours. And then the guys on the on the site as well, I took a load of ice creams out to, and I won them over in no time. They liked me, and I stopped the banter and abuse I was getting, just come to a halt. And I was like, I've just nipped that in the bud with such a simple little method in a way. And then from that day, I then took on a few other jobs. Come up when that job finished, went on to be a foreman and other positions, and grew from there. Really ended up on Crossrail for 5 years. That become 2016. Yeah, this was before. So Lee said as well, bang on with it. 2018 was when we kind of see it coming to light. But we put together a walk between Reading and Shenfield, and that's pretty much either end, west and east of Crossrail itself. I rounded up 7 people on the project to walk it with me, and we went from every single station across the whole of the Crossrail route. There's 50 stations, I believe it is. And we went from Reading all the way through London, Heathrow to Tower Bridge, out to Abbeywood, back to Liverpool Street and back out to Shenfield over 3 days. But I'd done that for myself because I knew I was going a bit, I'd given up rugby to work every Saturday, basically, and I was working every Sunday, and we'd normally have the 14th shift off, would normally fall in the week. We had that shift off because we were told we had to have it off. They wouldn't, Network Rail doesn't let you do it. But on that walk, 2 of the lads stood kind of out to me in terms of having their own problems. The walk itself was the charity of the choice for the project was Macmillan. So we literally raised money for them. And in no time, we pulled in £15,000 for it. We got every station sponsored, like a golf day does with the holes. I went out with the idea of get these stations sponsored by supply chain companies. But 2 of the guys stepped forward. One of them had literally just lost a granddad affected by cancer, so the Macmillan kind of thing tied in. But then one of the other lads who had worked with for like 4 years up to that point was having terrible troubles away from work at home, and no one knew it. But he's 6'2", massive guy. You heard him before you saw him, sort of man. And he's one of the best people out on the railway that anyone in the industry, the rail sector, knows the guy. And he was having serious problems, and we didn't know until the finishing line that his little boy had been going through a number of problems, growth issues with his hips and legs since he was born. And he'd been in and out of Great Ormond Street for 2 or 3 years. And his boy was there at the end with his wife. They broke down, was in tears. And that's when the penny dropped that this isn't just a walk. This is a bit more to this. And he said to me then, if you ever need any support, anything I can do, just let me know. And I still speak to him every now and then now when he's not working, because he's typically at work every night and not home resting, like we all wish we were. But he was there, and I come away from it thinking, why did a 3-day walk help me understand him so much more as a person in comparison to working alongside him, literally with him for 4 years? I had no idea. And it was that whole just coming away from the work environment, dropping guard. And he said it as well. His words to me were, when I'm at home, I'm the big man. I put the roof over the family's head. I have to be a big, strong character. When he goes to work, he's the same. He's the big, strong character, can't drop his guard, has to run the place. And that's his reputation, everyone knows him for. But then he literally said, I don't get any time to have that downtime for myself. And I provided it with this walk for him. And that just kind of, hit a lot of alarms in my own head. Like, wow, something needs to be done about this. Because 2 out of 7 people here we've just found out that only other guys have got their other troubles, but these 2 have happily stepped forward and spoken out about it. And from that day onwards, it was a case of, I don't know what we're doing, but let's just keep on going with this. And then worked on another big Thames water project with Murphy's and Kia and AECOM, AMK Deepham's it's called, sewage treatment plant. And that was had the same effect. I went in there, said to the guys that, can we do a walk here on a project? And a few of the guys there said, we ain't going for a walk, we're here to work. And that was kind of the ethos, and still see it today. But the director of the project was into his Ironman competitions, and I'm convinced he knew the crack. He knew the benefits of sport and exercise. So I thought, if I can tap into him, we're going to get somewhere. He backed it. We'd done it. And he said to me that day, he said, you need to go set up a charity or do something for the sector because there's more to this. And then that was where the journey started in, say, 2016, 2017. But like I say, I was looking online. He said at that time, thinking mental health in construction, there's nothing here. And I'm speaking to, I had 300 or 400 lads underneath me on the Thames Water project in our area alone. I think we had about 1,200 across the site. And I was foreman of one of the big areas. And I could see then, I was like, these guys have got no chance. Like, I'm one of them as well. We're all broken. We're all putting in 12-hour shifts because the maximum shift hours were given to us. We're all paid by the hour. The last 2 hours are time and a half. So we were all working absolute socks off just to cash in as we can. But nobody's getting a break or a breath of fresh air. and you can see the burnout. The railway world more so, but it was just broken, and it was predominantly men. It was broken man after broken man, and there was a lot of guys there what resembles the rest of the industry, but have given all their hours now to their family, and because the families need them at home and they're not there, they've lost their families, and it's like a double-edged sword, really. They've given everything for the family, but the family ultimately, the cash like seemed important at first, but they need you there, they need you present, and from that day we've kind of been fighting the fight with it. Really, we've got the sports side of it where we put together sporting events in the construction sector and just promote the benefits of sport and exercise. Is the kind of the be all and end all to it all, to kind of get a kind of ripple effect across the sector to show the benefits of it. It's scientifically proven. It's not our formula. We haven't invented sport, but we know if people get involved in sport and exercise, it will help them. And it helps a lot of people. We want those people who are out there with them stories to come forward and say that this is what I do. And that's kind of where we are today, really. And at the same time, we're fighting a little bit of a political fight in terms of the way that employment law operates and businesses see their employers and the employees, and how that's all done and how clients work. But as I'm sure we'll get onto, construction as a whole is multiple different avenues of where to go, really. And we're still finding where to go now, but we're making a lot of progress. So
I suppose, like, both of you have talked about the fact that it wasn't really that long ago that you started to think about this and look at it, and there isn't really anything there. And I suppose the conversations around mental health, suicide, well-being, they feel like they've been going on for a while, but construction's lagged behind quite heavily. And I'm sure you guys will be able to pull out better stats than I would around the differences and how prevalent things like suicide are in construction versus, the national average of everybody else. But I suppose why is it so much more difficult in construction? Why are the stats leaning towards it being more of an issue in construction than it is as the national average?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're 4 times more likely to die by suicide in this industry. We lose 2 people a day to suicide. We unfortunately have the highest rate of suicide of any industry across the whole of the UK. Weirdly, I actually think the industry, excuse me, I actually think the industry has done a really good job of raising awareness of mental health. Whilst I think we were behind, I think we actually caught up quite well. Because really, if you look at any contractor now, any tier 1, tier 2, I would argue most merchants, retailers, manufacturers have all got some position. And, obviously it's a positive one in the sense that they want to support tradespeople and construction workers. But the numbers around suicide get worse each year. So then you go, well, and this is where this sort of came about really with the Lost City, is that it's like, okay, the industry's done an incredible job of raising awareness around mental health. Everyone is aware of the fact that actually in construction it's worse than most industries. Yet, without getting too worky about it, like the KPI that you'd probably want to reduce would be that suicide rate, right? If you look at it, how can anyone, and we've had this conversation at length, but how on earth can anyone argue with wanting to reduce that number? It's, it's support, even if you're an absolute monster, right, and you work in this industry or you own a big contractor, you'll make more money if less people die, right? It's just there's no one that can argue with it, yet it gets worse each year. I think that a lot of the contractors world, and I've seen it actually through launching the Lost City, I think it's more difficult for them to get involved.
Why?
Because I think they've got a responsibility around the mental well-being and the safety of the trade. And I think, albeit these numbers are obviously getting worse and they're the worst across any industry, who has the biggest impact on that? It is the contractors. And you can't deny that. They're ultimately where most trades work, not all, obviously. it's two halves of the industry. You've got domestic, you've got commercial, and the sort of contracting side. But I do think they've got a responsibility, and I think by leaning into that, they are taking ownership of it, which I think is probably quite scary. And by the way, I think there's absolutely amazing people in every single contractor like across this country, I fully believe that. It's like any walk of life. You get some good ones and you get some bad ones, and there's some brilliant people. I've met them, I've worked with them, we've done stuff with them. But I do think there's I think once they're all running at it and trying to reduce that number, they are taking ownership of the fact that that number is partly happening because of them. And I think that's a big step for the industry to go through, personally.
We see a lot with businesses coming to us. Well, we go to a lot of business, speak to a hell of a lot of contractors as such, with ranging from 2 or 3 employees to hundreds, say. And a lot of the directors, and this is kind of where my head's gone over the last few years, I suppose, but a lot of the directors want to do more for their company. They want to do more for their employees. They want to support it. They want it to look amazing, and they want everyone to come to it and feel great and go home happy and safe. But they're spending so much time just trying to get paid and fight through the pressure of programs that they can't focus on just supporting their staff. And we even see it on our groundwork side of it. We'd love to be doing more with guys, but we're literally chasing all the time. And the sector sees that completely. But when you walk into, we've been saying this a bit lately, but if you walk into a room, what is construction, and it's got all of us in there, everybody that's related to the trade, construction world, consultancy side of it, supply chain, builders, merchants, if you went into that room and said, right, this is a whole industry, who's running this? There isn't anyone. And it's crazy. You've got one of the biggest kind of funding, kind of, what's the word to say? We've got the biggest sectors in the UK in terms of
third biggest contributor to the economy in the
UK. Yeah, and there's no one leading it. Now, we've been on an adventure recently with all that, with different entities. We've done work with the Construction Leadership Council, but they are looking at just the tier 1 at the moment and how that can then roll down. They're not in touch with what's going on below that, and they won't be if they're leading that way for a long, long time. And we're speaking directly, or have been speaking to them. We stepped away from a little bit at the moment, but there's so many different avenues to the industry that nothing is governed by it. There's a regulator in talks at the moment, what's looking to be coming in as from September onwards. I think what that's regulator is going to be regulating exactly is not confirmed, but the 2 people who will be running that are actually from the fire service who are coming in. And I think a lot of it falls off the back of Grenfell and how that has kind of petered out over these years. But the Grenfell report as well actually shows that this industry is so fragmented that there's no one there going, right, this is wrong. I personally believe there should be auditing system, audits programs on businesses as well, and the programs people are working to. Because when you look at in the last year, 4,000 companies went bust, just over. The year before that, 4,000 UK construction businesses went bust the year before that, and the year before that was 2,000. So you got, what's that for, 10,000 companies gone bust in 3 years just in the UK construction sector alone.
And I bet there's more in the first half of this year.
Yeah.
I almost guarantee it.
100%. And no one's actually going. Our biggest things, again, program pressure, the reporting of suicide in construction is not reported, full stop. The HSE don't report. That's not anything controversial. That's fact. They don't deal with suicides. They deal with incident on site. Suicides are a personal issue, not a workplace issue. A whole new political.
That's not just construction, though, right? That is actually,
employment law.
Employment law.
Yeah. So HSE's website, suicide is looked at as a factor that is personal issue, not workplace issue. My argument with that, and I can get on a high horse of it, is I don't pay you. I don't pay your company. I hold out and hold out and hold out. You can't deal with the fact that you've been knocked all this money. You go take your own life. That gets put down as a personal issue on your behalf, not me as someone withholding all these payments.
How is it dealt with if someone were to take their own life on site?
That's exactly the same.
Exactly the same. So it's not even dealt with as a
personal issue. It does not get put down as a. You would say it should, and this is where my head goes a bit. A reportable issue, disease and dangerous occurrence regulations 20, whatever it is. Sorry, the RIDORs. So if someone breaks their foot or off for more than 5 to 7 days, it is within the workplace, that goes down as an issue, as a reportable injury. if someone takes their own life, that's not a reportable injury. So we have got, say, the 7,000 lives that have gone in the last 10 years. I can assure you now, not one of those suicides has been investigated. Not one, from an HSE perspective. The HSE will refer it to the coroner straight away and say this is down to the coroner to give their reasons of the death. And they will turn around and say this person, the cause of death to this person was death by hanging, death by jumping off of a building, whatever it is, in the most, without going too graphic. They won't then go, okay, well, what's led them to do this? That question's not being asked. I've spoke to the head of the HSC, so the representative of the HSC, on a call with the leaders of the Leadership Council in construction, and I put it to them and I said, okay, so if it does go back to the coroner, I said, how many of these coroner's cases have been handed back to the HSC to further look into? They don't know the figure. I said, you don't know the figure because there isn't a figure. And they went, correct. And there isn't a figure to that. So that is where the problem is. If we had 7,000 Ford Fiestas are broken down over the last 10 years, I can guarantee you Ford might lift up the bonnet and go, should we find out what's going wrong here? Because this is going to affect our industry hugely, and us as a business.
7,000 Fords are setting on fire when people are driving down the motorway. Stop and go, what's going on with them?
So it goes back to, and this is, again, we started off with wanting to create a few football matches, similar to Lee saying, you go on this tangent where we come in. There's a lady called Professor Sarah Waters that is the head of the research of French employment law at Leeds University, but she looked at a case in France where one business had lost multiple people to suicide. She stood up with her evidence and said how that is linked to work, and the two actual directors faced custodial sentences off the back of it and were convicted. That was in France. She then got taken onto the Ruth Perry case, and Ruth Perry was a headmistress at a school in the UK. Ruth Perry took her own life. She left as far as I've been told, left her a note saying she couldn't face families and children with the failings of not getting outstanding on the Ofsted report.
Yeah.
And she said that is quite clearly a workplace pressure issue. That still hasn't, no one's actually been taken any further than that. And she hasn't got there with that. But she's literally saying we need to report these. If we report them, we can literally monitor them and we can look at trends and everything that's going. So there is some work in the background being done by Warwickshire University at the moment into this, what's starting now for 3 years.
Isn't one of the challenges with that, the way that employment works in UK construction? So like the division down into different subcontract businesses means that, I suppose, not that people want to walk away from their responsibilities, but they're somebody else's employee. And ultimately, when you get down to the people that are actually working on site, they're all self-employed.
Yeah.
So does that, I guess, compound the issue of responsibility, reporting?
Yeah, there's no HR departments for the guys on the ground, effectively.
It's a lack of ownership. It's just, well, kind of to your point earlier around the fact no one owns construction. No one owns the workforce either, because everyone just passes it off. Everyone passes it down. There's subbing. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's that whole debate around, like, you know, the gig economy and people being, you know, when you work, and if you're a freelancer and you work for someone, the same client for a period of time, if they're your only client, actually you're classed as an employee. There's a whole like host of things that are being attributed, but I think it's generally because more of the white collar world are better at communicating and standing up for themselves and the trade are, because those things are coming to fruition because people are like, hang on a minute, like I should probably get the same benefits. I'm in this office every day and I have been for the last 2 years. Just because you're freelancing, why am I not getting the same perks and privileges? And so people start to look into employment law around it. It's been happening in trade forever and a day. Like you'd be on a job building some infrastructure piece or like a prison or a school for years, and you know, but they get nothing. And you're absolutely right. It gets passed out. It's this accountability and a responsibility for the workforce. I think gets passed down. You know,
it does, but the pressure, the shit rolls downhill, basically, so you can kind of say it.
Yeah.
And then we actually find now there's a big stop between top of the companies and the guys on the ground, especially in these big supply chains where you've got principal contractors, tier 2s and 3s, and the whole, that you can have between the guy on the ground and the director of the company, there can be 6, 7, 8 different levels there, let alone through their own management systems within them. But people, especially that middle management, are under so much pressure, they haven't got time to be barking upwards to look after the people below them, even though morally they should. So there's such a disconnect between the top and the bottom. And I've seen a few things recently saying that gulf between top and bottom is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And society, I suppose, looks at it as well in terms of construction of, they'll just get on with it. I've never been, COVID come, I've never been busier. Literally, it was crazy. We were out on jobs working day in, day out as critical workers doing concrete bridge repair works. And we were just told just to get on it. We had a welfare unit for 8 people and 15 of us using it, 1 microwave. We didn't, a lot of us just stayed in our vans anyway, but we were told just get on with it. If you don't get on with it, you don't get paid. So we just kept our mouth shut. and we did. And yeah, it's the way, the sort of society with it as well. There was a conversation last week about Grenfell. Again, I will refer to that a bit because I think there's a bigger message with the way Grenfell's been treated. And we look at now in terms of the actual way society is, but nobody's ever spoken about the scaffolders who went up there. They went up there before the search and rescue teams, before the firemen. The firemen needed access up there afterwards. The engineers, investigators, they all needed to investigate that building. And who got them up there? Construction workers. They took them up there. There was a canteen on the ground of Grenfell, laid on food for everybody in the emergency services. Food was complimentary, food and drink, everybody, not a penny paid, supplied to everybody. Construction workers had a welfare unit, a microwave and a little and a water cooler. And that's all they had. The guys had to go to CAFs to do it. Now, the way that, and we just spoke about it since the other day, was it's the industry's with the poor cousin, effectively. And so and that is, to me, is the picture of society and the way to look at construction. They'll get on with it. One thing, there is hope, and I think the industry needs to really highlight a really good super trail last week. When those people in the construction game, the trades, were at Super Trail last week, they were seriously professional people, weren't they? From the people competing to the people, we had the ice skip there, people were talking about the way they look after themselves. That's not what society looks at people. These guys are like, I look after myself. A lot of them are saying, I do a cold water therapy already. I go to retreats. And the amount of people, Katie was with me, it's her first event, she's come out with us on the ground, and she was astounded by how these guys really are caring about themselves now and really looking after themselves and the professionalism in what they show. And my way of saying that was look at the first night, the evening of the first night.
Yeah, before.
In comparison
to
the average exhibition. I've been to quite a few over the years, and the first night is a big booze up. Everyone gets plastered. Loads of people on the company card, just absolutely making horrors of themselves, self included, on multiple occasions. I'm not trying to disregard that whatsoever.
Dave, you get on your high horse. I've seen you.
And then, but we were there. Barbecue was laid on. Cold drinks were out there. Beers, soft drinks, lovely food. Sun was setting. A nice warm car park all pitched up in, and people just took it easy because they knew there was a big day coming tomorrow. And I was quite amazed at thinking society will look at these lot and think they're bricklayers in here. I bet they're going causing a load of carnage and all that was going to happen if you put all this booze on for free on a night. And it wasn't, was it? It was what an evening. And we chilled out. I literally think I had one I can't remember what it's called now. It had a good name to it, that beer. I had one bottle of beer, one or two.
Amber Ale.
And
Amber Ale, wasn't it?
It was a furry ferret. That was his name. Can't beat a glass of furry ferret. But we sat there and chilled out, and it was amazing. And the buzz, and I'll preach it because it's the first exhibition / competition that I've been to in construction where you generally felt this feel of we're getting somewhere here in terms of the way we're looked at and the way we act.
It's celebratory, isn't it, of the industry, which I think, and I do think there is a shift happening. And I don't know whether it is because for the first time ever since we, been in the industry, I guess since On the Tools has been running, is that actually the construction industry is in the mainstream news a lot more, and not for a bad reason. Okay. It's not brilliant in the sense that the country needs more homes. Tool theft has been a massive push, lack of skills. But it's not the stigma of trades being highlighted in a bad way where I've seen previously. This is like, mainly they're like government problems, and actually people are looking at construction and actually like, yeah, that ain't fair. Like, why are the tools being so? Yeah, why would you want to join the industry at the minute? They've got higher suicide. All these things that have been pushed on the agenda now are because construction can solve some of these things. So, lack of homes, well, actually, yeah, we need more people into the industry. It's the first time I've seen people being like, yeah, you know what, construction is good. Like, and so that gets me quite like excited about the fact that maybe across the next decade, we can shift it, because, and I do think younger people are just generally looking after themselves and each other in a better way. I think camaraderie is probably less. I think they spend less physical time with each other. However, I would definitely say from like an alcohol perspective, it's I mean, if you just look at the guys who work for you, like
designated
young
drivers,
lads,
that's what they're employed as.
Yeah, but they're like, you know,
where
when
we
we went
go,
up to
never
Scotland, they're out running, they're out,
Yeah.
you know, and you look at a Friday
So
night,
boring,
and
isn't
yeah,
it?
well, you look at Friday night and Saturday nights now, and gyms are full,
Yeah,
like,
it's
you know,
amazing.
and it is incredible, and so you pass that on then through into Brick Lane, and suddenly these people are becoming more like athletes than they are like the old school, you know, 10 beers a night bricky.
Well,
Like, it's different.
Ash last week and we literally said that these guys are athletes, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and they're looking after their body like that. And if we can promote that message across the whole industry, people aspire to be. And
Exactly that.
My theory again, do we need 600 million put into us from government when we've got all the opportunity to do it already? I know a lot of people go, no, take the money, but I'm like, Ash, I'll guarantee the boys last week didn't have any of that 600 million, and look what they just delivered. You know what I mean? And inspired. They've had 2,500, 3,000 people, what it was across 2 days. The knock-on effect to how many people that's inspired, isn't it? And they have inspired people, because you're seeing all these posts online about messages coming in. The industry should be held accountable, say that you guys have got to inspire people, and you're not going to do that if you're 4 times more likely to kill yourself. Like, as a parent, I don't want my kids coming into an industry. I'll tell you what, why don't you go for that one, son? Because, okay, you're going to 4 times more likely you might kill yourself, but you'll have a good laugh while you're doing it. You know what I mean? It's not appealing. And I think it does go back to education as well, really. Even at school level, I'm seeing so much now. We've had a 13-year-old lad pass his CPCS digger course a few weeks ago. And it made press. I think JCB's given him a digger for it and all this kind of stuff. But in my head, it's like, right, you've set the benchmark now. If you've allowed that one 13-year-old to do it, we need this rolled out across the whole industry, or whole of the UK, to say, if you're 13 years old, on the 6 weeks holidays, you can do a 2-week placement. We'll get your ticket. Yeah, you can't go and work. We know that. But when you fall out of school, you know you've got a qualification already. I guarantee there'll be a lot more.
Summer camp for construction. Do you know what I mean? Why can't these things happen? We're about trying to engage younger people, because unfortunately the message generally through schools is still,
I like that idea. Summer camp.
Yeah.
the message is still negative. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, you'll end up over there. Like, and that can't be.
Yeah.
If the country has got a problem, and it's got a serious problem around home building and infrastructure, and we need more people, then we have to change the perception from like all the way down there at like 11, 12, 13 years old, maybe even younger, but certainly at that teenager age, into when they're leaving. You know, the industry has. The base rate of any industry is 1 in 7 people are neurodiverse. Construction, it's 4 in 7, right? So so you just think of the journey that younger people are going on when they land in construction. They've been told for the last couple of years that if they don't do X, Y, and Z, they're going to end up being a failure, and they'll end up in construction. And then they end up in construction. So they're day one, they're like, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, they're like, I've not done very well here. Then they may well be one of that 4 in 7. Well, probability says they're more likely to be neurodiverse than they're not. If you look at those stats, they're working away a lot. They're going into an industry where you've got to go on a steep learning curve, and they're already in a position where they learn differently. And then we wonder why people have got like drug and alcohol problems. We wonder why the suicide rates are, because they've ended up, their journey into construction is one that you wouldn't wish it upon anyone. You would, like, why isn't there why aren't the pathways into construction? Just, even if we just said, okay, we're going to focus on one thing, we're just going to make it a bit more positive to join construction. How can that be a bad thing? Maybe better than what we're doing now.
Yeah. We're it's interesting. Like we've gone through 2 other topics we've done podcasts on. We had Ash come on and talk about Super Chow and Super Chow, and we've done
all the press now.
we've done a podcast about skills gap as well, and all of these things kind of, they all sort of mesh together in a way, and a lot of it comes back to, for me, community and like consistency. Like if you can bring people together and you can shape
Yeah.
best practice, and you can give people a voice to be those role models, then actually a lot of the challenges construction faced are they're meshed together.
Yeah.
Suicide rates, mental health on site, support people coming through colleges properly, how you sort of harness social media to bring communities together. A lot of them are intertwined, and this is probably where I'm interested to get into Lost City, because for me it's such a good example of both of you guys have done so much to build community, similar to what the guys at Superchild have done. And the Lost City, I think, is a good example of harnessing community as a force for good. So, don't know, Lee, if you're better to go through where Lost City came from.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's all sort of data back. So we, as you well know, have a product called Trade Brain that we again is an accident. Basically, like everything we end up doing is accidental. We were sat on loads of data, wasn't really connected. We started to sort of try and connect it together for it to make more sense and it be more valuable to us and then to partners, etc. And then in doing that, we started doing these white papers, and the team were like really keen to do like a really big deep dive and a big piece of research around well-being and mental health and construction. And out of the back of that, one of the biggest things there's a couple of things that stood out. One was loneliness, that I think just probably back then, and I think less so now, definitely got overlooked. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about when we went up to Scotland, but Steve mentioned one of the chaps we met up there, and he referred to it as solitary confinement. And I was like, it's so interesting because you would obviously, he was like, obviously I've got a choice of whether I do it or not. It's like, but if you actually just look at the like process of it, it's kind of the same outcome. I generally work for like 10 to 12 hours with not as much sunlight as other people, and I'm on my own a lot, pretty much the whole time. And I remember coming away from that just thinking, oh, man, like I've just never thought about that, and how many hundreds of thousands of trades feel like that on a daily. I mean, it's a big thing for people to be feeling. And then the other thing was access to professional support. I think it was 47, maybe 48% of people said that they just wouldn't know where to go and don't have the access and don't have the money and the funds to afford to do it. So when we were thinking about like what we could do and how we could try and drive some change, a lot of the conversation we were having was, well, awareness isn't going to cut it. Like kind of what we were saying earlier, everyone's aware of it, like, but the numbers are getting worse, and we really wanted to specifically do something around suicide. So we just went with that data, and then we worked out that, you know, it was the amount of people that we'd lost over the 10 years. And then really where I think the sort of creative came to life around the data part was the fact that it was worked out that they could have built a city the same size as Cardiff, you know, and then when you try and, the Lost City is about trying to visualize that to make a statement. I think it's interesting what you're talking about where things are intertwined, because we're just looking at that now around how, like, you know, how the skills piece around, well, why would you want your kids to join an industry where they're four times more likely to die by suicide? As a parent, like
negligence.
Like you wouldn't want them to, right? What's the impact of tool theft, you know, and on people's mental health, and then joining the industry? Like, why would you? Again, it's another thing where you're like, well, I've seen all this tool theft. Like, I'm going to buy 10 grand's worth of gear, and statistics show that they're going to get stolen at some point across the next 5 years. They're going to be stolen from me. And then, so I guess my point there is we're just sort of looking around what can be done, and the rhetoric around the sort of future of the Lost City is actually, you know, maybe it should cover things like skills, and maybe it should cover things like tool theft, because whilst the overall aim will always be, we want to raise money to support people when they need it most through professional therapy and advice and access. actually highlighting the challenges around skills and how important it is, highlighting how devastating tool theft, all those, they're all linked, kind of to your point around community and perception and positivity around the, we really like fully fundamentally believe those three things are linked, and how can we cover things more, and for me the loss has been incredible. I think it's allowed me to meet more of the industry. It's made me feel quite positive about such a crap scenario and statistics and situation. We've got some really big things planned for it again next year. And I think it's brought a lot of the industry together on something that, obviously it was a bit of a whim around whether it would work and whether it lands or not. And
it's the power of how it was delivered, wasn't it?
I think so. I think the team did an incredible job in terms of like covering those 10 cities, and getting hold of 7,000 hard hats is not an easy thing. I know people think you might should be able to buy them, but actually it's not. It's really just not as easy as getting access to them and actually getting rid of them again afterwards, because the moment they've hit the floor, you cannot you can't actually resell them. You've got to just either use them or recycle them, so you have to get them back out the door again. 300 road signs all distributed across 10 cities, all in one morning, all at the same time. Like, it was a feat, but they absolutely smashed it. And, through support, with Steve and Construction Support and the guys there, and
I was
the guys
brought in to put the signs up at two places where there's armed guards. I was like, cannon fodder.
Yeah, right.
You were the muscle. Yeah.
We're Downing Street, mate. That's where we're going.
Downing Street and Houses of Parliament. I thought, none of these other 10 cities have got guns. I was talking to you, let Steve go first.
It was one of the cities that was probably the most, risky to do it, in the sense that, risk our end was obviously not getting shot, was more about like being moved on. But actually, we had more success than others.
Yeah.
There was others, like Leeds was a real tricky one for them.
Society again was, the police come out at the Houses of Parliament and said, "What are you doing, lads?" And I was like, "We're just putting these signs up." And we'll explain what it's for. So that pulled the charity card. I was like, please don't shoot. I said to him that this is what we're doing. He went, "Okay, bear with me one moment." Went back to his radio, and he pretty much radio saying they're putting some signs up out here. It's a peaceful protest. We're not throwing orange paint at them. It's absolutely fine. And then they literally come back with, "Lads, by the way, it's default." It was a code they gave us. If you get questioned by anyone in London, by the police, give them this code, they'll radio it in, and you've been signed off. You can put your signs up. So that was kind of like the go ahead then, to just go and put them up and do what we need to do. And the police get it. The police understand that they go through enough trauma within their roles. And I think, but yeah, I didn't realise the impact of what we were doing. The buzz of getting out there at 6 a.m, doing that, and then I think it's 9:30. We got the all go, wasn't it? In terms of press go on, no one putting a thing out on social media. Everyone, I think my footprint is more so in the LinkedIn world rather than Instagram and other channels. So our team do a lot in those channels, but my presence, is best known on LinkedIn on my personal account. And we were sitting there. I think you said the radio station here, and I didn't know who they were. And we were on a radio station. I was like, I don't know, I've never heard this radio station. I Googled it as we're speaking on air, and it came up, I pressed it, and they own like every single radio station in the UK. So I was like, oh, this isn't just like Dave's little back door in pirate radio station. I was like, oh, better up my game here. But then I said it, and I went, Christ, look at this post, and just going ching, 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 ching. I was like, holy, this is powerful. Yeah. And then the most amazing thing was, we wasn't due to put, you guys hadn't planned to put them at Piccadilly Circus, did you? But in Connor, on the off chance, was like, I've got some spare signs. I remember sitting in the van going, I've got a couple of spare signs, I'm going to throw them down at Piccadilly Circus. And then next thing you know, the day after, wasn't it, we found out?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
What was his name?
Teddy Swims.
Teddy Swims is literally doing a random...
Did a gig in front of all of them and all the hard hats and everything. And it was weird because no one saw it on the day, and it didn't get shared on the day either. It was the next day. And I was like, that happened when... And kind of was like, I don't know how I've missed that, because I think we got called by the police to move them off Piccadilly once we I think they were down for like a couple of hours max, and we missed the whole thing. It was in it, like the run up to it, because that creative changed a lot through the process. So originally it was going to be 7,000 hard hats all in one pile. That was the statement we were going to make. It was going to be somewhere in London, but we wrecked so many places, and that you mentioned them earlier around like the Just Stop Oil thing. again, it's this positioning with construction, in my opinion, because we were like, well, we already get a bad rap. So we don't want to be the people where we stop people getting to work, or NHS, ambulances getting through some or whatever. We don't want to be just stop oil.
Because it's the opposite.
Because it's the opposite.
People that get you to work, that build the roads for you to drive to work.
We're the lot.
The buildings.
Our industry is the one. These guys, they're the people who keep it moving, not stop it.
Yeah.
And then we were going to be like taking this really devastating facts and this really powerful creative and turning it into people being like, "We just move out of my way." And actually, this is I don't care about your cause anymore. I care about getting to work, or I care about this, which I think is what happens with Just Stop Oil, right? People, generally, if you ask people, a lot, well, yeah, like we should. Do we need to be more environmentally friendly? Do we need to change? Of course. But if you ask them whether they're doing a good job of it, like a lot of people will say no. It's too disruptive. They're almost like, borderline terrorists on the other side of it. And we didn't want to be in that position. And finding a site where you can drop 7,000 hard hats in the middle of London without causing disruption to travel, but then equally having enough disruption that people stop, and it's not like a monument or like a piece of art. And we're like, well, I don't want that. It's not an installation. That doesn't feel powerful enough. So, honestly, I reckon
we spoke on the rally,
2 weeks before we changed what we were going to do, and it came off the back of a meeting we'd had, and we'd decided to split to 10 cities, but we were going to have 10 cities of 700 hard hats, because we were going to go, okay, well, 700 represents each year, each city represents the decade. And then as we were doing them, we were like, well, how do you make them? It's funny, because when you start doing these things, you just come up against problems, right? You have this grand idea. It was actually Alice who came up with the idea about the 7,000 hard hats to just pile them up in one spot. And we were like, done, that's the one. This was like 4 months ahead of it. And then 2 weeks ahead of it, we changed it all, because over time you couldn't get a site, all these things. And then when we made the decision to do 10 cities, we still had this challenge of, well, the moment you pile 700, it's not actually that many. Like it sounds like a lot, but visually you just put them somewhere in a city, in say Birmingham or in London, and you're walking past. How do you keep them up so that they're like in a structure? So then you start going, okay, well, we'll put railings around them, and then you go, yeah, but 700, you want them to look like the top of an ice cream. You don't want it to look like a 99, right? You want it to have that structure. Otherwise, it's just lost its meaning. And then we were like, and also, if it doesn't have anything else with it, what, where does it say the lost city? And, all these different things, QR codes on the hard hats, no. And then someone at the very end of the meet, I think it was Ad, was like, we could just use some like road signs and put them with them. And, and he was like, and you could change, instead of having stop, you have stop suicide. And I looked at him and I was like, mate, that is it. Like, that's how we do it. I was like, and we have loads of them, and then you take over cities rather than doing like one spot. So it's like, we had like 10 days to try and get 300 road signs. Like, Connor was having a breakdown. I don't know how that geezer did it. I really don't. Like, he just lived in a lockup for like 2 weeks ahead of it. But it was military. It was a military operation. We had trades travel down from all over the country and go back up to it. The guys who did Newcastle drove down the day before, come to the lockup in Birmingham, grabbed all their gear. We'd been like tying hard hats together to make sure everyone had the same amount. All the different signs were like, and then they just loaded the van straight back up to.
Got a lot of support, didn't you? There's
crazy
lots
amount,
of different people
crazy
from across
amount.
the industry.
Yeah,
all content creators and people who are doing stuff through social. They all travelled from each area of the country to Birmingham, grabbed their stuff and went back out again. Like, bearing in mind, it took over 3 days of their life, not getting paid, all voluntary, and had the biggest amount of impact I think we've ever had across the 10 years we've been running the business. It was incredible. It's such an incredible thing for everyone to do.
Yeah, LinkedIn blew up, let's say, for herself from our end, was beyond belief. And even just 2 weeks ago, I put a post up writing about construction as of today, August, and then I just put a picture still from that Lost City campaign, and it's absolutely blown up again. So, yeah, thank you for that. I did tag his in. But the image is the powerful piece. Isn't it?
Yeah, like when we spoke about it a while ago, Lee, it's I think it's the shared voice. I think you've got what you've harnessed is a lot of people, a lot of content creators that have a story to tell or a platform that they want to use to channel into a good purpose. And Velocity is such a well executed, well branded, powerful message that everybody can get behind. Because one of the questions that I wanted to come on to next was, what more can can other people in the industry do? So manufacturers, merchants, main contractors. For us, we're a fairly small manufacturer, and this is where our conversations about the Lost City came in, because thought, well, we care about mental health for people on the ground, and that gives us an avenue to be part of a collective voice that's louder than just us shouting ourselves. And I think that's probably relevant for a lot of people, that instead of shouting, they just sort of stay quiet, and having that opportunity to be part of a bigger voice, I think is quite powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to sort of push. I mean, we're talking about the Super Trail guys. They donated £1 from every ticket that was sold. So they've done, just from Super Trail, £2.5 going into the kit. Incredible straight away. And I think it's just understanding how you can link in. Obviously, we've been chatting about, we need to sort of pick all that back up again, don't we, in terms of products and things like that. But I think there's, for me, I'd love to start seeing. We're trying to work out how we do it as well. So like, we've spent a lot of time on it this year, even though externally, there's an argument where it's not been as prolific. As you start with such a big bang that then you end up being in this position, like, how do you better the first bang, which is actually really quite difficult. We've got some stuff planned, and actually, if you look at the objective is to raise money, not beat the creative every time you're rolling out something new. But there's even internally, so I mentioned Trade Brain. So Trade Brain now, we donate 10% straight to the Lost City from all Trade Brain memberships. So that's just a thing where internally I can be like, well, okay, that's one box ticked. We're just constantly donating money there. But really the big push is, how the hell do we get 3,000 businesses across construction raising £1,000 a year? Do you know what I mean? We're done then. It's £3 million a year, and we're away. The funding for the industry is there. And I think where my head has gone to, and we've been chatting about this a lot lately, because we're both trying to push. The last year, I've spent more time. It's going to sound like such a wanky thing to say. I've spent more time down in Parliament this year than I have done in the last 10 years, right? And I want to, but what I mean by that is because I'm being like a little roach, like I'm trying to like get into as many groups and as possible, because I think I believed, and I think I'm probably believing it less so now, that all of these different working groups that sit in different departments and councils and bodies of construction, that actually if we club them all together, we're going to make some, if I can be involved in 10 of them, I'll be able to, and I think I'm believing that less so now. I believe it in skills, because I think it's on everyone's agenda, and I really, really believe that actually people will start to see the rhetoric and the perception of construction change, because I think that is it's for everyone's benefit for that to happen. But I think from a well-being, and specifically from like a suicide point of view, and getting people linked into the Lost City and all those types of things, I've kind of come to the conclusion that if we don't do it, and I say if the industry doesn't do it, if people who give a shit don't go, okay, this is what we're going to go and do, it ain't going to happen. And for me, if we can provide a big enough pot of money that is aggregated from the boots on the ground themselves, from raising money and running marathons and I don't care, baking cakes, whatever, right? And then we can do the same through merchants, retailers and manufacturers, where they have one-off days at each branch and they raise a couple of £100. All of these things at scale will make a big difference. I think if we can get a bigger pot of money, I think we can support people through apprenticeships in a better way. I think we can replace people's tools when they're stolen, maybe even give people better security, fund those different types of things. And I think we can save lives through giving people access to therapy. The percentage drop off from therapy, it's ridiculous that once people have gone through that process, the loss of life after that is so minimal, but it is about getting people through that process. And I think at a lot of times, even still, and we've spoke about how do we promote it more, and actually with the amount of funding that's coming in, we're in this weird, horrible position where we're like, we want to promote it more, but actually, can we afford to promote it more? Because the funding will dry. I don't want to leave construction, sport, and banded builders in a position where they're like, we're now inundated, and actually this is having a negative impact on the charities. That's the last thing I want. So I've got to deal with the front end of it first, and I believe that we can solve that problem. That's what I believe. I believe we can get it so that there's millions of pounds going into the two charities where they can deliver more work than what the industry delivered over the last 20 years.
And echoing exactly what you said, because I think when we met for lunch the other day, wasn't it? You'd come to that conclusion of going with all his mates in the briefcases in Parliament. We were trying to find our...
You don't wear your shorts.
By the way, there are some really brilliant people part of these working groups, but I just... It comes back to a lack of ownership. No one runs construction, so getting things done is so difficult. So difficult.
We've done it, and I've spent a lot of time, resource, energy, for similar paths, but in different angles, coming through different groups. And then it's only when I made a few decisions a few weeks ago, and then we met for lunch. It was like, we literally just said the same thing at our HQ in terms of we got to just go back to what we know, what we can do, and the effect that we can make on the ground. Because, and then in that same time frame, someone said, "Steve, have you seen this working group?" And it's like, well that contradicts that work. And it's just, there's no high. So we just got to do what we're good at and just crack on and keep on making all this noise, because in the last year, a lot of noise has happened, and there is many, many good stories coming out. I think that if we can promote the good stuff,
and maybe that'll solve it, right? Maybe the push for skills, and because that hits everyone's agenda and it's the right timing and all of those things, maybe with that push, we can actually get a better leg up on the rhetoric and story that we're trying to push around well-being. Maybe they meet at some point, and therefore the funding could come over, But at the minute, I think the Trojan horse is skills. I really believe that, and I'm all for it. I don't care how it gets done. I couldn't give a shit. I'm not precious about how we end up supporting people. If it's on the government's agenda because we need more homes, whatever, let's ride it. But I think we've got to do it ourselves. I really do.
So I think we've spent quite a lot of time talking quite high level, and I think there's loads of positive stuff happening. Conscious of time, I wanted to maybe ask you, Steve, like the guys that are out on site now.
Yeah.
So we talk about people trying to pick up on signs, or people trying to pick up on their own, how being more self-aware. I guess what's the advice that you give to anybody that's listening to this that are out on site?
There is people out there that will help, but it ultimately comes back. It might sound a bit harsh, but we're in an industry where it kind of is everyone for himself, because loneliness is such a tough thing at the moment as well. But there is a lot, so the Instagram, the social media world, there's a lot of people flying the flag now, but there is help out there. Ultimately, obviously, through Project 7K and ourselves and Band of Builders, what we're trying to show people is that there is support there. But at the same time, when you're in a dark place, it is the darkest place in the world, no matter how bad or little or small it is. But it will pass, and that's the biggest thing. I often have it on Mondays where you just feel down and crap, and you've had a good weekend, and now you're in this all-time low. But I know, don't worry, tomorrow's Tuesday, we'll crack on again. So it's understanding your own head and your own signs. I had it in my own, obviously, the conditions I had with my stomach issues. It was all signs linked back to the stress. So listen to your body, research, and have a little reflect on what are you putting into your body as well. Because, again, I'm no preacher of it, but beers and fast food isn't the way forward. If you're coming out with a negative outcome, just take a step back, look at the way you're treating your own body, the machine that operates your life, and just think, maybe the fact that then people aren't looking after me isn't the major issue. Maybe it's the fact that I live on McDonald's and 25 beers at a weekend. So it's not, there are outside factors to it all, but I think ultimately you are responsible for number one. And it's tough and it's a harsh way of saying it, but if you can't look after yourself, you can't rely on other people to look after you, because it's so hard. We've had it so many times, grabbing people, like, we're putting all this into you and all this support for you, but you've got to look after yourself. And it's a tough one to take. I get it, but I'm only talking from what helped me, really. It was being slapped around the face and being, you've got to look after yourself, because you're letting a lot of people down otherwise, and you're letting yourself down. But don't make the decision what's permanent, basically. Yeah, in that way, there's a lot of people out there who care for everybody. We haven't heard one story of someone's took their own life and it's not affected anyone. It affects everybody when someone does it. Even us as people in this industry, we're all affected by the people we don't even know who do it now because they are one of us. We are all together in this. Put your hand up and just get involved and look at ways you can look after yourself. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And again, going back on that in terms of we need to promote the good stuff and the ways that people can do it. We had it with the ice last week, the cold water therapy. I think we're trying to do now is show people that if you go out for a little jog at the weekend, if you go for a walk with your mates, if you've got a dog and you go for a walk, it all helps your mental health. Get outside, embrace it, and take in a good bit of oxygen, really. And we'll all be fine, ultimately, on that one.
There's a plan.
There's a plan.
There's a plan.
Go for a run.
So
Get in the cold.
we finish. We've been finishing our podcast with two quick fire questions. I will start with you, Steve.
Ooh.
So Lee, you have a moment to think about your answer while he's answering.
Oh,
it.
I got the slow fire one.
Yeah, the slow fire.
I'm taking the hit again tonight.
Yeah. Send him in.
That explains a few of the facial
I
injuries.
won't shoot you. Won't shoot you. Don't worry. Steve, what is your favourite tool?
Petrol saw. Yeah.
Why?
It just gets things done, I think.
The blunt instrument.
Yeah, we had this before. Someone said, if you're going to go to, I've spoke to mates about it, if you're going to go to a treasure island, where would you go? Petrol store is good, but you've got to have a supply of petrol. So that's not so good. Petrol,
You would take a petrol store.
It was the one.
To a
It
desert
gets
island.
things done. So it's the main tool in the van that always goes, just gets you through everything. However, no, if I'm going a mattock, I'd say like a pickaxe, but more of a. It's not pointed at a pickaxe, more of a flatted end, and you can take anything down with a mattock. So I say, and they are the likes of stuff you can only find in these random places, these random stores in the
Isn't
Highlands
that what
of
you got a
Scotland.
new one of?
Yeah, I got the handle. I got a new
Yeah,
handle
yeah.
for it because I'd broken. Yeah,
Yeah,
oh no, I
yeah,
bought a whole new one. Yeah, it was a mattock. Yeah, it
Bought
was.
a new one, yeah.
But yeah, that thing gets things done. You can, in terms of groundwork, and you get it done in terms of self-security. Protect yourself.
Good for defence.
I haven't got one down the side of my van, don't I? But yeah, you go into town with a mattock.
No one's going to mess with you.
No, you can dig anything with a shovel, but when you come across anything in the ground, the mattock is the go-to. Gets you out of it. What's yours, Lee boy? Man of the tools.
I mean, yeah, you talk about removing any masculinity I had left in me, which was this amount. I don't know. Have you got another question for him? Or,
You can go now.
I'll go with
What's
my
your
favourite
favourite
tool.
tool? It doesn't have to be like
no, it's not going to be
it's
not going to be anything to do with construction, is it? It's going to be something that's going to fit with these nice soft fingers.
The keyboard.
I would say I'm going to go real nerdy and go quite granular. I would say that just Google Sheets. I know that's real nerdy.
Engineers.
I'm a nerd.
Google
I'm an
Sheets.
absolute numbers nerd. I love a spreadsheet, mate. I can't.
But on Google
like-
Sheets, not Excel.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just Google everything really. The
Oh,
business
yeah.
has been built on Google, so I don't tend to
lost.
use Excel. Not a Microsoft man. My favourite tool would be, maybe I'll go more general and just say Google in general, but it seems a bit searchy, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
the tool part for
Like
me
you don't know
is,
what you're
is
doing, and you
essentially
just search all the time.
Fully
Google
edit.
Sheets.
For the edit, should we say a spirit level or a tape measure?
yeah. Do it again. Go on, ask me again.
No,
Ask me again.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
That's
You
the
stick
Beeler
with that.
spirit level.
Well, let's make it quick fire because I think our audience is
Yeah,
people
I'm a nerd. I
on the
like
tools.
spreadsheets.
So if me and you are getting into
Yeah,
Excel
yeah.
versus Google Sheets, it's
Perplexity AI is another one as well.
I've
I've lived
just
on
become
that.
favourite guest.
right. We'll go back to you, Steve.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you wish everybody knew about your job?
Oh,
What a belting question that is.
can't tell them it's a secret. I'll actually go back to going for the charity side rather than the groundwork side. On charity, oxygen in the brain is, like I say there, is the answer. And I'm no scientist, but in terms of mental health, I do think oxygen to the brain is the answer. And there's a lot of different complex ways about this, but cold water therapy, as we did last week with the ice, all goes back to breathing. Yoga, meditation, a lot of it all looks at breathing. I've even got involved with a bit of jiu-jitsu over the last few years. just off the back of people I've met in this industry. And that ultimately goes back to breathing and all about countering attacks and defense based on when you're breathing and when your opponents are breathing. It all goes back to breathing. I saw a therapist myself 6-7 years ago to understand my own mental health because I'd become a bit numb with it. And they helped me out. But everything I listened to and done with the therapy and treatment that I had through that was based on breathing. And it is all about getting oxygen into the brain. And it's, I think, something I always thought, why aren't we taught this stuff at school? We've just been at a retreat. We took 30 of our kind of supporters to a retreat last week. And guess what? The first hour of it was breath work. And it was literally laid down breath work. And it was all about controlling your breathing. We had rail engineers, we had scaffolders, we had a number of big, ugly construction workers, stereotypically, literally in pieces. They laid there all together, blindfolds on, done it. And everybody come out of it after an hour like, holy hell, that is, the effects of it.
Big difference.
Yeah, and the people I've seen through the struggles of life and mental health all go through this, find this stuff in one way, shape or form. And even going out for a walk, it's all about breathing in the fresh air. What is it? It's fresh oxygen to the brain. And yeah, as simple as that. I don't see why we aren't taught as kids. I think if you look at maybe like the Asian world of Japan and China, all of that world, and they really harness this stuff at children's level at school, and obviously about breathing. And what do we do when our kids will kick off and are in tears? Breathe, just breathe, relax, breathe. But no one's actually explained the science to it. So I'll go with that one, if that's easy enough. Top that.
What was the question again?
The one thing that you wish everybody knew about your job.
It's
other
a really
than that you
good
spend half of
question.
your time in Parliament. I think you've made that clear.
I didn't
to
say half my
everybody
time.
now.
That is, you've completely misquoted me because you're being an arsehole.
You and your cabinet, what do they
You're
think?
trying to stitch me up. I listen. I caveated that sentence before I said it, so I feel all right about it. What do I wish people knew about my job? The amount of impact you can have, right, as just like one person. So, you know, if I think back over the years around what we've ended up doing with On the Tools, like I know nothing. I'm not academic. I stayed in A levels because I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I got 2 E's and a U. I was the last person left at the school when it was results day, trying to get myself into a university. Literally the last person on the phone to a university. Derby University let me in. I have no idea why. I then dropped out of uni a year later. I would imagine if I did an IQ test, it would be sub 100, low. I'd struggle. I always have done. However, we've ended up being able to corral a load of people based on an idea. And if I think about On the Tools, I think about the Lost City. I think about my now like ambition and vision to like be able to change the industry. I'd say to anyone, if you've got any idea or anything that you want to go and do, anyone's telling you can't, I just call complete bullshit on it and get on with it. That's what I would want people to know about my job, is that I am like probably one of the least capable people to do stuff, but I'm still doing stuff. That's my answer.
You pulled out of the bag there.
I
again.
did.
Good. That's good. No, it's a really powerful message to end with. I think that no matter who you are, how small you are, what you do, what your role is, you can make a difference. I think that for me is what the Lost City campaign is, and what a lot of the key message and key takeout for me from you guys is that you can make a difference. But also we have to make a difference, and that it's the collective industry that will make that change. So those individuals coming together with one shared voice. So I think that is probably all we've got time for. And I just want to say a big thank you, for coming onto the podcast, but actually a big thank you for creating what you've created and kind of converting those communities and those groups into a force for change and a force for good. So, Big
A
thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah,
Obviously,
thank
Project 7K, and I think for supporting us on the tools. And yeah, big fan of German engineering, so I was very keen to come on. So thank you for having us.
You're
Niche.
welcome.
I do. I like it.
We'll
Exactly.
do another podcast on
German
German engineering,
engineering.
if you like.
Technique.
I'll skip that one, boys. I'll be on Google Sheets.
We'll do one on Excel. Don't worry, Excel.
Well,
and
I'll
Google
be there at
Sheets.
4th. I'll be nerding out on that one.
I'm busy that day. I'm poking
And-
myself in the eye. Hello.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Subscribe now and follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can listen and follow The Measure of Things on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And join the conversation on Instagram at Stabila_UK.